2:45 p.m. local time. The sea is open, the visibility is clear, and inside the Combat Information Center, the watch begins like any other. Radar sweeps in silence, contacts remain steady, and nothing stands out as unusual. The USS Sampson is following a routine patrol route through a familiar transit corridor. No alarms, no tension, just disciplined monitoring across a vast stretch of ocean. Then one contact changes speed. At first, it is almost too subtle to notice. A small surface return, riding low against the waves, begins accelerating in a way that does not match ordinary commercial traffic. It is not a gradual increase, it is sudden, forceful, and intentional. The radar operator marks it immediately. Long range, stable bearing, speed rising fast. Within seconds, more signs begin to line up. No AIS signal, no registered identification, no answer to initial bridge-to-bridge calls. The contact is not simply moving quickly. It is pushing hard through a corridor already known for long-range smuggling activity. Inside CIC, the atmosphere changes. Displays refresh, sensors narrow their attention. Electro-optical systems begin shifting toward the vessel's projected path. Then the forward camera delivers visual confirmation. Dark shapes begin flying off the stern, one after another, compact packages bouncing across the surface before disappearing beneath the swells. That is not routine deck gear. That is cargo being thrown overboard. For half a second, the room goes still. Not because anyone is confused, but because the picture is suddenly clear. Every sailor there recognizes the pattern. Low hull, narrow beam, multiple high-output outboard engines. A classic go-fast boat, built for one purpose and one purpose only. The vessel keeps accelerating, cutting a sharp white trail across the blue water. It is trying to outrun detection. It is trying to outrun authority, but it is already too late. On the bridge, the commanding officer stays calm. He does not need to raise his voice. The evidence is enough. A stateless vessel, no compliance, active disposal of illegal cargo, clear indicators of trafficking in international waters. This is no longer observation. This is interdiction. The order comes down clean and controlled. Set condition 3. Prepare the helo. Across the ship, the response is immediate. Doors are secured, stations are manned. The destroyer does not need to make a dramatic move. Its role is already clear. Command, control, and dominance of the area. On the flight deck, the helicopter crew is already in motion. Rotors unfold, fuel lines disconnect, systems come alive. There is no panic, no wasted movement, only the kind of precision that comes from repetition and training. Back in CIC, the radar track is now firm, speed confirmed, heading confirmed. The suspect vessel is running at maximum throttle, but the math is not on its side. In open water, there is nowhere to hide. No shoreline, no terrain, no cover. More debris hits the sea behind it. More cargo is dumped, this time faster and less carefully. That says everything. They know they have been spotted. They are trying to buy speed with a lighter load. They are not going to get enough of either. At 2:48 p.m., the flight deck reports green. The helicopter lifts smoothly from the deck and banks toward the intercept course, staying low over the water. From the air, the ocean becomes unforgiving. Every wake can be seen. Every turn leaves a signature. Every movement is exposed. The destroyer feeds the aircraft constant updates. Range, bearing, speed, all in real time. This is not a wild chase. It is a controlled convergence. Below, the go-fast keeps running. Above, the helicopter closes quickly. And for the crew of that small vessel, still throwing millions into the sea, one reality is becoming impossible to ignore. There is no coast ahead, no safe harbor behind, no route left unnoticed. What began as a routine patrol has now crossed fully into action, and the next phase is already unfolding. By 2:49 p.m., the MH-60R Seahawk drops lower and gains speed, its blades cutting through the Pacific air. From just 200 feet above the surface, the ocean looks almost like a map. Wakes, vectors, patterns of movement. At this altitude, nothing escapes notice, especially not a boat being pushed to its limit. The aircraft's infrared system locks on almost immediately. The suspect vessel's engines burn hot, overworked, and stressed. On the display, the narrow hull glows against the cooler water, skipping across the swells as if it is barely touching the sea at all. The boat makes its next move, hard to port, then starboard, zigzagging in an attempt to complicate the intercept. It is a familiar tactic meant to force the aircraft to adjust, to create hesitation, to gain a few precious seconds. But this helicopter was not launched to bluff. From the cabin, the crew has a clear view. The gunners track the boat while the sensors maintain lock. The aircraft is not just observing, it is documenting every turn, every discarded package, every effort to evade. The pilot brings the Seahawk even lower. Rotor wash tears, white spray from the surface. The sound alone carries a message. You have been found. The aircraft makes its first pass abeam of the vessel, close enough to leave no doubt. Over open frequencies, the warning is broadcast in a calm, unmistakable voice. Unidentified vessel, you are operating in international waters. Heave to immediately. There is no reply, no radio call, no reduction in speed, no sign of compliance. Instead, more cargo goes overboard, this time with urgency and disorder. One package slams against the hull before falling away, breaking apart on impact. A burst of white spray flashes against the sea. Even without lab analysis, the meaning is clear. The situation has escalated again. The Seahawk repositions, tightening the intercept from just off the vessel's stern quarter. Close enough for everyone on board to understand they are being watched. Close enough that the only thing left to do is keep running straight ahead. But straight ahead leads nowhere. Back on the destroyer, CIC follows the sequence in real time. The distance is shrinking. The speed gap is narrowing. The geometry now favors the aircraft completely. The order from the bridge is precise. Escalate warnings. The helicopter banks and descends once more. This time, the gunner leans out, aiming not at the people on board, but at the water ahead of the bow. A short warning burst tears across the surface, throwing up tall plumes of spray just off the starboard side. The message is unmistakable. This is no training event. This is no longer simple surveillance. This is a lawful command to stop. The vessel does not stop. Instead, it pushes harder. Engines screaming, wake widening. The helmsman is extracting everything the motors can still give. The boat visibly shudders under the strain. It is no longer a calculated move. It is panic. Inside the helicopter, no one wastes words. The warning phase has ended. The pilot swings around for another pass, lower, tighter, closer. The stern of the vessel fills the view. 3 outboard engines exposed and vulnerable. On the destroyer, the commanding officer watches the live feed. The criteria are satisfied: active flight, refusal to comply, destruction of evidence, risk to navigation. Authorization is given for disabling fire, directed at the engines. The Seahawk slides into position. The gunner steadies. No hesitation, no excess, just precision. The burst is brief and controlled. Rounds strike the outboards. One spits sparks, another sputters and dies. Smoke rises from the stern as the vessel yaws sharply. Speed drops at once. The long white wake folds in on itself. Water closes around the hull. The pursuit is over. The Go Fast drifts, dead in the water, smoke lifting from the stern. A moment later, hands appear above the deck, raised and empty. Overhead, the Seahawk maintains its orbit. No more warning bursts, no more evasive movement. The vessel is stopped. For the first time since 2:45 p.m., the situation begins to de-escalate. Not because leniency was offered, but because control has been established. What follows will not be about speed or force. It will be about boarding, evidence, and the law. At 3:01 p.m., the suspect vessel drifts helplessly, its engines disabled, the smoke thinning into the warm Pacific air. Above, the Seahawk circles steadily, cameras still running, sensors still locked. Nothing moves without being seen. On deck, the crew of the Go Fast is no longer trying to escape. They kneel with their hands raised, staring upward. The rush that drove the attempt to flee is gone. All that remains now is exposure. In the open ocean, there are no shadows to disappear into. Along the port side of the USS Sampson, 2 RHIBs hit the water and surge away from the ship, racing toward the disabled craft. The handoff is seamless. Air control gives way to surface control. Observation gives way to custody. The mission has changed. Weapons are still present, but they are no longer the center of attention. What matters now is procedure, training, and legal authority. The RHIBs close quickly, carving white wakes behind them. A Coast Guard law enforcement detachment rides with the Navy boarding teams, fully equipped, clearly identified, and authorized to act. This coordination was in place before the helicopter ever left the deck. As the boats come alongside, commands ring out, firm, calm, and bilingual. Keep your hands visible. Do not move suddenly. The suspects obey immediately. No resistance, no argument. two men, both appearing to be in their 30s, sunburned and exhausted, kneel on the slick fiberglass deck. No weapons are visible, none are necessary. The situation itself is already overwhelming. Floating nearby are tightly wrapped bundles, rising and falling with the swell. Dozens of them. Some remain intact, others have split open during the hurried dumping. Each one is photographed, marked, and logged the moment it is located. The boarding team works with practiced efficiency. One sailor keeps overwatch, another secures the detainees. A third begins the safety sweep of the vessel. What they find confirms everything. No flag, no registration, no radio, no life jackets, no navigation lights. This was never a boat intended for safe return. A field test kit is opened aboard one of the RHIBs. A small sample is taken from a soaked brick of white powder. The result turns positive immediately. The report goes back to the destroyer as the count continues. 47 bales are recovered from the water and the vessel itself. Roughly 3,400 pounds in total. Estimated wholesale value, $58 million. In that trade, this is not a minor loss. It is a major blow. The suspects are restrained and advised of their rights under maritime drug enforcement procedures. They say nothing. They do not need to. By then, the evidence is already speaking for them. The facts speak for themselves, louder than any explanation. Under international maritime law, a vessel without nationality, essentially a stateless craft, falls under U.S. jurisdiction when it's caught in illegal activity on the open ocean, especially if it ignores lawful commands and carries no registration. At that point, authority shifts fully to the Coast Guard. Everything about this case is clear, documented, and recorded from multiple sources. There's no ambiguity here. With the suspect secured, attention turns back to the boat. Its condition tells the rest of the story. The engines are torn apart, the hull is split along the keel, and fuel is slowly leaking into the water. There's no bilge pump, no anchor, no safe way to tow it across hundreds of miles of open sea. It's not just unusable, it's dangerous. Left drifting, it could easily become a serious hazard for passing ships. The boarding officer makes the call official. The vessel is unseaworthy. Recommendation, controlled disposal. Back aboard the USS Sampson, the commanding officer acknowledges without hesitation. No debate, no delay. Everything is logged. Preparations begin immediately. The seized cargo is transferred, carefully tagged, sealed, and stored. The detainees are escorted below deck, where medical checks are completed and procedures are followed step by step. What started as a single radar contact has now turned into a fully documented interdiction. Arrest made, cargo secured, authority established. But there's still one final step. By 3:45 p.m., the damaged boat drifts alongside the destroyer, held by a single line. Up close, it looks even worse. The fiberglass is cracked wide open, the engine mounts twisted, and a thin oil sheen spreads across the water. This is no longer evidence. It's a liability. Out here, far from land, even a drifting hull can become a threat. It could float for days or weeks, eventually colliding with a cargo ship, a fishing vessel, or something larger, moving at night. Leaving it behind is not an option. The Coast Guard officer makes it official, unsafe to tow, recommend disposal at sea. Again, no argument. This isn't about spectacle, it's about safety. The boarding team begins stripping the vessel of anything that can be recovered. Fuel containers are removed, equipment detached, and the deck is cleared down to bare fiberglass. Nothing unnecessary is left behind. Meanwhile, the recovered packages are already secured inside the destroyer, each one logged and sealed. The chain of custody remains intact from the moment they were pulled from the water. A small team returns with a controlled charge. Simple, precise, and designed for one purpose: to breach the hull below the waterline and let the ocean do the rest. It's placed carefully at the stern, where the structure is already compromised. The timer is set, final checks are completed. Overhead, the helicopter continues its quiet orbit, recording everything, not for attention, but for accountability. At 4:12 p.m., the final report reaches the bridge. The area is clear. The order is simple: proceed. A moment later, mark. There's no dramatic explosion, just a dull, muted thump, almost nothing at all. Then the water begins to do its work. It pours through the breach. The boat tilts, slowly at first, then more sharply. Air escapes in hollow, uneven bursts. The stern sinks, the bow rises briefly, exposing worn paint and damaged fiberglass. One last glimpse of a run that didn't end well. Then it's gone. In less than a minute, the ocean closes over it completely. The surface smooths out. The oil sheen begins to fade. No debris remains. It's finished. For the crew, there's no ceremony. Watches resume, logs are updated, systems return to normal. The ship moves on. This was never about destruction, it was about resolution. The impact, however, is real. Millions worth of illegal cargo will never reach its destination. 2 traffickers are now in custody. A smuggling route has been identified and disrupted. Somewhere far from here, a supply chain has just been broken without warning, and none of it required excessive force or unnecessary escalation. This is how maritime operations work when discipline leads the way. A warship built for high-end combat shifted roles seamlessly. Surveillance platform, command center, aviation support, and law enforcement partner, all within a single afternoon. Soon, the ocean returns to its usual state. Quiet, vast, indifferent. Radar screens show nothing unusual. No fast-moving contacts, no anomalies. But the message has already traveled far beyond the horizon. Out here, speed doesn't guarantee safety. Distance doesn't guarantee anonymity. And when a U.S. Navy destroyer commits to an intercept, the outcome becomes inevitable. By 4:30 p.m., the scene is calm again. The track is closed. The contact is gone. Below deck, the detainees sit quietly under watch. No resistance, no statements, nothing left to argue. The situation speaks for itself. In secure storage, dozens of packages are carefully logged, weighed, and sealed. Every detail is documented. From recovery to prosecution, nothing is left to chance. This is the part most people never see. No noise, no drama, just process. And it's that process that turns an operation into a case that holds up later. The destroyer continues its patrol, engines steady, sensors scanning wide. Because this wasn't an isolated event. Operations like this are part of a much larger effort, one built on intelligence, surveillance, and constant presence. Ships like the Samson aren't here by coincidence. They're placed with precision, guided by patterns and data collected over years. The smugglers never saw it coming. They only realized it when it was already too late. For the crew, this was routine, not because it was easy, but because it was practiced. Every step followed a clear structure. Detect, identify, warn, escalate only if necessary, apply force carefully, transfer authority, document everything. No shortcuts. That level of discipline matters, especially in international waters, where every action can be reviewed later, legally, diplomatically, or publicly. That's why every warning is recorded, every decision logged, every action justified. Because in the end, legitimacy matters more than anything else. Somewhere else, someone will hear about this. Not because of how it ended, but because of how it unfolded. Clean, controlled, and unavoidable. And every time something like this happens, it changes the equation. It's not just about one lost shipment. It's about disrupted plans, broken trust, reassessed risks. In that world, risk is everything. The USS Samson was designed for missions far more complex than this. But adaptability is part of the design. One day it tracks submarines. Another day it supports law enforcement at sea. That flexibility isn't accidental, it's intentional. No unnecessary force, no lives lost. A major operation shut down in a matter of hours. As the sun lowers toward the horizon, the ship continues forward. Watches rotate, systems hum steadily. Another patrol begins. Out here, the ocean doesn't announce what comes next, but someone is always watching. And the lesson from this day is simple. If you try to move illegal cargo across open waters, speed won't save you. Distance won't hide you, and once the process begins, there's no turning back. The ocean may be vast, but it's never truly empty.